Hello and welcome to Wednesday night, 9 p.m. This is the What Not Podcast. I'm MikeZ.
I think I'm still Chris.
Very good. I'm glad you're here, Chris. Thanks for joining us, everybody out there in the land of opportunity. Today's podcast, podcast, webcast, live stream, all of the fun rolled into one is going to be about, well, basically job stories, favorite projects that we've done, maybe projects we've done that weren't the favorite, but they turned out to be good life lessons, and just general randomness from our past. Chris has brought several pictures. Mike has brought no pictures. All of mine are, unfortunately, they're not digital. That's how old they are.
Well, if you look at some of those pictures, you can see that some of mine aren't digital either.
But you had time to scan them in, and I applaud you. So we'll have yours.
We've been woodworking a long time. So, most of on the social media stuff, I've seen some of our recent garb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, it's tough to reach back in the black hat of magic before the dawn of cell phones and camera phones. And
remember when we were excited to get a disposable camera that we had we just rolled to the next one? I mean, that was awesome. They were cheap. They were like $20 and had 30 shots or something in it. 24. That was it. 24 shots. And you didn't know whether or not you got a good shot. You were just hopeful.
Yeah, nostalgic weddings today like to use them as their tables at the receptions and stuff. But back then, that's what we had. That's all we got. You were careful with those shots too. You went, oh man, I've only got 3 left. No, I can't take a picture of you, honey. I have to wait till I get something better, more valuable. And I can spend these last 3.
Yeah, everybody group in for this one. I'll just cut you out later.
And then you take it and you realize that the sun was glaring on you and nobody showed up in the photo.
There's so many lessons learned, and it always flashed. Didn't matter. It always flashed. No, I always liked whenever you rolled the next one and it was like you had 3 left. That you're right. There was a stress there. I can't run to the local store and get another one. Now you can load up your entire phone with 5,000 pictures.
My phone's it gets crowded. I'm going to upload all this to the 72 terabyte cloud storage. Okay, now my phone's empty again. I'm good to go.
Everything just automatically uploads to a cloud now. Just disappears. Technology. Yeah, there's a lot that's definitely changed over the years. So a lot of stuff that I did, we were lucky to get a picture of it. Stuff that I was involved with, had lucky to get a picture of it. Most of it, unfortunately, just happens to be all up here. Mm-hmm. But it is what it is.
Sketch it out for us.
Sketch it out. Well, yeah, some of the stories are easy. They really aren't about the project as much as the atmosphere around the job itself or things that you did on the job while you were there. So let's take a look at let's see, this is a pool.
Yeah, this was during a time where I kind of got away from woodworking because I didn't have a shop. So I had to find other things and just went and worked for a company that did a lot of hardscape and landscape. And they didn't do a whole lot of stone or hardscape, but I did. So we wound up getting quite a few jobs. And that's one of the cooler little fire pit retaining walls that we did.
So what, you were involved in this whole project?
Mm-hmm. Well, that one I came in on the end for the pavers. The retaining wall was already built, but I did the pavers and with the pit.
I like the look of a few branches getting stuck in there, and like that's it's meant for a fire.
Mm-hmm. But the first one was that swimming pool. I probably did about, I don't know, probably 90% of that job. And it was a nightmare.
So that's not a stamp? You couldn't just walk by and just...
That is not stamped concrete. That is all pavers. And the border around the pool area is a cove stone that actually I cut everything out, had everything set. And, you know him, Joe Isaac. I hired him to come and mortar those in place because I just didn't have time to do that part. Mm-hmm. And so he came in, mortared them in place, and I kept working on the rest of the pavers.
Joe's
fun job, though.
It does look like a fun job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks stamped. I'm not buying it. It's too perfect.
Well, I could have sent you another 4 photos that showed it partially unfinished,
It's
if
pretty
need
amazing
be.
because I know if I would have done it, there would have been at least 4 or 5 bricks just sticking out, and I would have been like, good enough.
Well, the hard part was whenever you got to the other side of the pool and tried to bring both sides back together. That was a massive job there. The guy only wanted a sidewalk originally, and we did the sidewalk, and then he decided he wanted to do full retaining wall and sidewalk that went all the way around his house. So that sidewalk goes all the way around, and then the retaining wall. There's a couple of those. That's more the breezeway of the pool area.
So, but this is all the same job?
No,
Or
that's a different
okay.
job there. Yeah,
Has a similar look. That's what I was wondering.
yeah, a little different job.
Okay,
The
so
stone
this
on
is
that,
tied with this.
yeah, the stone on the retaining other, yeah, that one is more radiused and textured.
So what
But
about the deck? Were you involved with the deck too?
no, someone else built that.
Okay, so you come in. This is just the hardscape at that time.
Yeah, we did the main job was irrigation and water diversion. And when I came on board, I wanted to do a lot more hardscape because I hated digging trenches for irrigation. So I started selling more of the hardscape jobs, and that got me out of some of the irrigation work. So
And then similar, not the same
uh,
job. Obviously, this looks different.
definitely not the same job. That one, the entire back, that was a deck, a wooden deck that was on there. We tore the deck off, built up the retaining wall around the patio, and then filled in, and then did um, all of that work. That was, matter of fact, that was my last job I did when I worked for that company. My last day, I was out on that job site till about 6:30 in the evening.
Dang.
Yeah, but we got it finished.
But you got to finish, and that's what
Yeah.
matters.
I said I can't leave with this undone, so stayed late and got it done.
So I don't have much in the hardscape area. I didn't do. I mean, I poured concrete once.
I don't like that either.
That was interesting because it was one of those Costco specials. It was in Hawaii, and the guy had gotten, I don't know where he got it from, but it was a 30. I could be lying. It may have been 24. It looked bigger, but it was a planer, and you had to put it on something hard, concrete. And unfortunately, everything in Hawaii is like, just pole barns and dirt. They really don't invest a lot in the infrastructure there. And so he's like, let's pour this slab. And he got it, he had me form it. He had me do all the stuff too. And he kind of just gave me like, oh yeah, you just blah, 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 do this. And I mean, rebar, the whole 9 yards. And I had zero clue, had never poured. I mean, I'd seen it like when a truck comes and dumps it, but I didn't know how to do it by hand. And so what he really wanted to know was if I could mix it properly and then pour it in there. And that was the easiest part. And that's what he was most worried about. And I'm worried about like everything else, it being level, it being square, like, yeah, but
Smoothing it out.
just the whole thing. Yeah. Cause it was one of those ones. It was like, at that time, it was like $109 big orange Costco cheapy, almost like something you'd find at Harbor Freight nowadays. Just enough for basically one job, and it was super loud because the whole mixing assembly was plastic. Yeah, it's needless to say. I mean, as far as I know, it's still sitting there per Google Maps. It shows it's still there, so it works for me. And yes, it's outside. It's not undercover.
Well, volcano hasn't come and taken it away yet.
No, not anytime soon. But let's see. So I guess with that particular one, so when I moved there and I was fortunate enough for my mother-in-law to know someone who was in woodworking because that's what my wife at the time, I told her I was a woodworker. So knew a guy. He basically had bought part of a sugar plantation. So the buildings that were on it, the houses that were on it, all that kind of stuff, they were pretty much giving away for cheap just due to the fact that the sugar plantation was no longer a part of it. But sugar over there was like your big tobacco. It was like your like no, not that, but big tobacco. I'm trying to think of industries, so that was their main cash crop. And so when they pulled out, they had all these buildings, all these trucks, you name it. So the job that I picked up was just basically doing kind of grunt work. and one of them was using a wide belt sander, and in this lean-to out the back. And it was funny because the shop itself had a normal roof. It was sitting there, and then they kept adding stuff down the hill with the same roof line. They just kept putting things underneath and digging it out. And they had a wide belt sander. They had probably a 43 by 75 Grizzly on the dirt. And we were the craziest thing of that was that we were doing silk oak. And so, with Scott Caskey, he turned a bowl of silver oak, silk oak, same thing. And over in Hawaii, you're called a haole. And so the white people, the haoles, are very allergic to it. So I basically turned red from sanding this stuff. Never forget that. And actually, my entire face now is covered in the red rash. It's just you don't see it because everything's covered in it. So I always look like I have a tan. But man, tell you what, it was interesting to sand big wide boards on the dirt. That was very different for sure. But that was a wild job. I have no pictures of that.
Why would you want to?
True.
It was the day I became the beast.
Oh, I tell you what, you talk about, it was like poison oak, but because it was in dust form, it was wherever, like in the crease of your arm, for instance, it would be there. Oh, it was horrible. So anyways, those were fun times, right? Do what you got to do. But let's take a look at this one here. It's sideways, but we'll go with it.
That was one of the first projects I ever built on my own outside of like a classroom. When I first started working for that cabinet shop out of high school, my wife, girlfriend at the time, collected those weird American doll things, and she wanted a doll cabinet. So I made her a cabinet with glass sliding doors, and when we got married years later, it became our china cabinet. So
cool. What'd she do with the dolls? They'll go to storage, or sure?
Nah, we sold them all. Got rid of them. Finally got smart.
Certain collectibles are good to keep. Some aren't. I have a full set of Fleer football cards from 1992. Yeah. Why I held on to those, I have no idea. I thought they'd be worth something. I think they're worth like maybe 15 cents more than they were then.
See, 92. That was about like, if you had rookie card, it was like Herschel Walker year, I think.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Man, what was it? King Griffin Jr. was one that was on the baseball side of things, but who was the Peyton? Nah, I'm thinking Walter Payton, but that wasn't that one.
No, I don't know. Back in the 80s.
I'll go back and look. But yeah, I still have those. I'm just going to give them to my son. That way he can just do whatever way he wants to with them. Why not? So let's see. What else am I sit in a cardboard box?
Yeah, this is one of those that I only got one photo, sadly, that made it. I built two of those, one on either side of the fireplace, and one was just missing a shelf that he wanted a entertainment centers out of it. That one was the bookcase version. So just simple, built-in raised panel, nothing fancy.
Yeah. Nothing fancy, but at the same time, there's a lot that goes into that. I like your coping for the molding there. That looks good on the floor, on the baseboard.
Yeah, molding was one of the things I always did well. I was slow at it, but man, I could cut
it well. Now I've got something. So there was a kitchen job we did. It was a huge kitchen and laundry room, and there was a lull for a little while there. They had to like put it on hold while they were getting the appliances from England. And so the dad of the gentleman who had the kitchen, he had these bookcases that looked just like this, same type of, plywood for the backer, all of that. And he wanted it from this color. He wanted it all painted white. So that was actually one of the first jobs I ever did, painting something, but doing it in lacquer because he didn't want latex. He didn't want his stuff to stick to it. He had all these really nice books and collectibles. So I remember I pulled up to his house, get out of my dad's trucks at that time. That's who I was working with him. And Gerald and I come up, and Gerald's Navajo Indian. He's got about 3 foot of hair sticking out. You know, he's got a ponytail that's about 3 feet long. And at that particular time, I had turquoise hair, just because it was before turquoise hair time. Yeah, and I had hair. Now it's not so much. But what was funny is that we get out of the car, and he told my dad after we met him, because we, walked in, checked it out. Okay, this is what's going to be, get an idea of cost, all that stuff. He said, if I didn't know any better, he said, I was figuring Motley Crue was walking up to do a job for us at the house. He was like, if I didn't know you guys, he's like, I would have sent them packing, because he's like, your son's got blue hair, and then there's Navajo with huge ponytail, and it was blowing breezy that day, and so it's just blowing out the. Oh my gosh, that was funny. But needless to say, we got the job and we completed it. But yeah, that was fun. Yeah. All we need is a construction worker. We'd have had that one knocked out.
Yeah. Oh man,
I don't do things like this. This is all you.
Yeah, that was an interesting project. The customer came and we went back and forth on kind of design because they had no clue, but the wife absolutely loved outdoors. And their house had this little white picket fence in front of it. And so well, why don't we make the base look like a picket fence and put flowers in there? Well, the original idea was she was going to put real flowers in there. But the glass that they chose was like forever heavy. So they opted to just put fake ones in there.
That was probably a really good idea. Otherwise, you'd have to make some sort of door or something to get in there.
Well, that was going to be my plan. Was one of those panels was going to end up being a hinged door that you couldn't really tell was a hinged door. But before I got to that point, they said, no, the glass is really heavy. We're just going to, we're just going to put fake ones in there. And that way we can change it out seasonally if we want to. But I scaled a picket fence down and kind of came up with my own little design for the little arc at the bottom and tapered foot, and went and got bought 4 little 3-inch balls for the top. It was a fun project.
What I like about it is how it was not intended with those chairs, but it goes with those chairs. That taper on the bottom really helps sell it with the chairs, because they're rounded and tapered. Mm-hmm. So it looks good. It looks like it was a set that you would get. It looks nice.
I was pretty happy with that job. That was one of the most challenging jobs I ever did on my own, because I really didn't care about building kitchens and baths and all that. I wanted to do custom one-off pieces and let the cabinet shops have the big cabinet jobs. So you'll find, if you see other pictures of my stuff, it's usually entertainment centers, bookcases, mantles, kind of specialty pieces that,
there's a nice niche for one-off, because cabinet shops don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're set up for production. They're set up for cutting all these panels, all these doors, all these face frames, everything the same, roughly the same size, maybe a little longer here and there depending on the space, but they don't want to mess with the one-off. So having the one-off capability really helps you when you want to, do a project here or there, or if you want to make it your full-time business. One-off business is great.
Yeah,
little on the blurry side, but we'll go with it. So,
well, again, back before cell phones on cameras. I mean, cameras on cell phones.
This needs to be reviewed by Berkey. Berkey would appreciate this.
I did for years when some of the one-off cabinet stuff was, not really kicking heavy. I did ceramic tile and worked for a guy, for a good bit, and that was one of the jobs I did while the wife and the kids went on vacation, because it was the only time I had the kitchen to where they wouldn't bother me. And the wife couldn't make up her mind what she wanted. No, bother me. I chose the right word. She wanted something different as the backsplash focal point, but she couldn't make up her mind. And so I said, well, just you go away. I'll come up with something cool. So I just sat out in the garage breaking pieces of tile for, I don't know, an hour till I came up with pieces that were sized enough to do something weird with.
So my OCD's kicking in on the right side. Do you see
Okay.
it?
On the right. Oh, are they at the border piece, the little angle
Yeah.
piece?
The only ones that aren't going in line with the rest of them.
Yeah, those are those pieces were pre-cut with that weird angle, and I didn't have enough to cut them the way I wanted to cut them.
Gotcha.
And so it ended up being just what I had no choice but to do it that way because I had no pieces of that left. If I would have had one more piece, I could have made a double angle like what's on the bottom left because that
Yeah.
was my original intention was to do a double angle on the bottom like that. But anyway, it didn't work out.
No, it's one of those things that, I would never be able to pull that off, but my OCD sees it. But I like it. I like how you broke the pieces and pretty cool.
I was Tetris master that day.
There you go. Chaos Tetris Master. Let's see. Kitchen wise, I'm just trying to think here. What? Oh, got it. The Larry Shelsey incident. So I worked at a vacuum store when I was 18. See, was it 18, 19, somewhere in there. I was, yeah, that job sucked. That was great. I learned a lot about a lot of things as far as running business, like it was just one guy. And really he was just ready to, kind of step away from the everyday in the shop and kind of do more things, semi-retire, if you will, but he was too young to actually retire. But his brother and him, their father moved from New York to Arizona, established a very nice, reputable vacuum cleaner sewing machine company. Well, when he passed away, they went different directions. So one of them got Phoenix and the one that I worked for got Mesa. So being in that business and learning many things, one of the things is that whenever you are brothers with somebody else, they will warn you ahead of time if you do work for them what to expect. So we had done work for Corey. Corey was a guy I worked for. Larry was the brother. Larry was top notch, great dude. But we did work for him. My dad did this whole kitchen and it was a really dark stain. I remember that. I remember everything being almost black, but when you put the light on it, you could still see wood grain. So it was a really hard finish to do. And then something happened with the kitchen. So they had to store all of the cabinets in the garage. So we shrink wrapped it. I'm pretty sure we wrapped it in a blanket. Like we pretty much try to protect them because it was months. Well, when we finally went to install them, they had people walking in and out, had dinged them up and dented them. So he was making us do it for free because it was, not installed yet and trying to blame us for doing it while installing it. So that time I learned that if you have a black Sharpie and you try to put it on something, you will find out very quickly that it is a red Sharpie under the light. It is not actually black because a black Sharpie, the type of ink that it uses, the dyes are red based black. So when you have it against a brown, dark brown cabinet, it shows up in the light like a bright red dot. So needless to say, he had to get creative. And at that time they had luckily just came out with a whole line of different color Sharpies and they had dark brown. So that worked out pretty good. But you got to learn up front that if someone kind of warns you when you're going to do work for somebody, everything seemed fine. Everything seemed like, maybe he's just a little, just being rough on his brother. But we learned very quickly when lawyers got involved and it just got out of control. As far as us having to pay for all these damages and we didn't do them. But yeah, needless to say, when everything was said and done and the dust cleared, back to, everything fine again with them. But I remember being on the job installing and it was one of those first days, we're talking late 90s. So he had one of those whole house systems to where you could play music in every room. And at that time that was unheard of because everything had to be hardwired. It wasn't Bluetooth. And I remember he was playing Miles Davis. Never heard Miles Davis in my life. And so I was like, this is pretty cool. What is this? And he just looks at me with this look of like, you don't know who this is. And just the way he says it, you don't know who this is. Like, come on, man. So needless to say, black Sharpies are red. And always, take it with a grain of salt if someone tells you about a job you can do.
I was doing a tile job one time and you get some of those people that they hired you to do the job Oh, look at there. Welcome
Yeah.
back from Hawaii.
Oh, is that where? Oh, I couldn't tell from that picture. It, just looks like he's, right out back of his back door there. It doesn't really look like Hawaii.
It's a green screen. Come
It's
on.
green screen.
He
Nice.
didn't go anywhere.
He's upgrading his video technology. Good, Kyle. Thank you for joining us tonight. What's up, man?
Should photo V carve that picture right there. Anyway.
Nice.
So I'm in this house doing this job for this guy, and he's one of these homeowners, real fancy dresser, and he's looking over my shoulder, telling me what I'm doing wrong and how I should be doing this, and how on the TV shows, they do it this way or that way. And I said, well, this isn't a TV show, this is real life, So anyway, so I'm scooting in this bathroom, doing a row of tile at a time, backing up, and this guy with his fancy Argyle socks, literally. I stepped on his foot 3 times because he's that close to me over my shoulder while I'm hunched down on the floor doing the tile. I said, I'm going to fix this guy. So I grabbed my bucket of water with the sponge and got the sponge out, kind of wrung it out a little bit, cleaned up my mess on the tile. Well, instead of just gently placing it back, I kind of threw it back at the bucket. Well, hit the water, and the water kind of splashed up and got his sock all wet. And I knew it did because I saw it like under my arm when I was reaching for the things. And he didn't say a word. He just left. I was like,
there you go. Yep. Accomplished.
So I finished the bathroom, and he goes, wow, that did turn out great. I said, listen, you can't trust what you see on the TV. It's not real life. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and they cut out a lot of that stuff because it's boring stuff. That's the stuff that you watch. You watch This Old House, they'll show it to you because you need to know that doing it yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of home channels that, if you look at the bottom left and they show you what day it's on, all of a sudden they jump from 3 to 27. It's like, oh, it's already done. Look at that in 5 minutes.
Well, I like to lay a lot of especially small bathrooms. I like to lay a lot of my tile out dry, and so I could get my cuts already cut. Because there's nothing worse than a small bathroom and you have a couple of full tile and everything else is a cut. So if you go ahead and get, the bulk of it done, you don't wind up wasting your thin set. Because I did a lot of that by myself. So it was constant running down. And, if it was just a straight cut, that's simple. But a lot of the notches and stuff, anyway. So sometimes
that's a good idea.
You got to be willing to be a little bold and get your,
maybe that's something.
Socks wet.
For someone listening, and if you're in the business of doing anything with trades, with your hands, doing work and jobs and this and that, you're going to have customers that just want to hover. One, there's some that are just, maybe they got burned in the past by another tradesman. And so therefore they just want to watch you like a hawk. It's not you. It's not your fault. So, you can start the conversation with them as far as just getting to know them, finding out what happened, whatever. Then you have some that just want to be right on top of you just because they're just that type of person. I don't remember doing anything to get anyone to leave, but being a large guy who likes breakfast burritos, there is that particular fog you can create, and then you can apologize because you are working, you're bending down, you're kneeling, whatever the case may be where that comes out. That usually keeps them out of the room for a little while.
Yeah.
But, if you're also someone who is interested in hiring somebody to come in, a lot of times it's not about, they just want to be left alone. But at the same time, we can get work done faster if we're just left alone. Until you're getting to that final stage where you're just cleaning up or you're just putting the final touches on, that's a good time to come in. But, it's got to be a balance. You got to get to know people at the same time. You don't want to just walk out and just completely leave them free to roam the place.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we marked the tile areas off one time in one job, and it was just a remodel too. So the customers, they were the only ones there. It wasn't like there were other tradesmen. So we marked the room off and kind of barricaded it slightly with some, tape and some paper and a sign that said, do not enter wet tile. Mm-hmm. We come back in the next morning and you literally could see footsteps where they stepped on the wet tiles to get to the other side of the room. Instead of going another route, they walked across the tile, and then they said, well, we didn't do that. You must have done that before you left.
Always.
Really? How do you figure? How do you figure? So
Good evening, John. Thanks for joining us. Just want to say hello to you. So, so there's a hierarchy whenever you're doing any kind of house build, remodel, it all comes down to the painter. Everybody will push off the next job to the next trade coming in. So framing will get it close. They say, "Oh, that's a drywaller's job." Drywallers will put it up and they won't sand everything down. Oh, that's the painter's job. Everything always comes down to trim and paint. So if you're in those fields, I'm so sorry for you because that is tough. If you're not ready for it, if you're not used to it, that is the worst. Everyone just basically lets it roll downhill. Good way to put it. The guy we were actually doing that kitchen for, his dad that I did the bookcases for, he started a plumbing company. And so he always had 3 rules he told me. And I'm like 16 at the time to 18, somewhere in there. Cause we did a lot of work for him. And he always had, crap rolls downhill, paydays on Friday, and the boss is always a son of a B. And that was his 3 rules. And I'm like, but you're the boss. And he's like, and don't you forget it. It was just, very cool guy at the same time. But trying to think here. Oh, okay. So you want to talk about mistakes? I had refinished, or actually finished, all of these solid cherry doors. There was roughly 30 of them in this house for the same kitchen. They were doing a full remodel. It took like 2 years. So there was a lot of different parts I came in and out, over time during that time to do finishing work. So we did all of the doors, and they're solid cherry, and they all had to have this special stain over the clear finish and then polyurethane over that for durability. Well, if you didn't know, there are certain grades of tape that you can use whenever you're masking off something. Each tape has a certain shelf life of how many days you can leave on before it either gets more sticky or it loses its sticky. But either way, the glue that's on tape has a shelf life, a service life. So they decided to change the floor, and they wanted to go with a thicker hardwood. So instead of whatever, I think they were doing Spanish tile originally or something, and then they went with hardwood. So I did all the doors, all the casings, all the trim for this house, all had to match, all solid cherry. Well, when they were tearing out the baseboards, they messed it up. When they went to cut the door, they put tape on the very bottom. They had to cut off like an inch or inch and a half off these doors. Well, this is Arizona, number 1. Number 2, they left the tape on for more than 2 weeks. So when they went to pull the tape off, it pulled all the finish off because it had baked into the finish, and then they just ripped. Yellow masking tape will get more sticky as time goes on until it basically dries out. So yeah, needless to say, then I had to touch up 30 doors.
I believe they're coming back to the shop so they can be done in-house.
Oh, yeah, all of them were done. That's where I learned to spray interior doors on sticks so they could all stand up. And I wish I had a picture of that because I remember that. We were in a rush. Arizona does get cold in the wintertime. So we had 3 of those kerosene heaters going. We had 30 doors lined up in a 1,000 square foot shop. And I'm just spraying every door going down the line, have all these kerosene heaters going. Yes. So I'm spraying polyurethane mixed with open flames. That's genius, right? I mean, you could tell I was young at that time. And we had to bake for 8 hours because they wanted to put them in the next day. So that's also where I learned to figure out the dry time of polyurethane very quickly. But, oh, man, yeah, so we had to do all of those because they wanted to put them in so that way I think it was not a building inspector, but someone was coming to inspect everything that had been done, I think for certification of some sort. But yeah, needless to say, that was a lot of fun because that trim, I mean, 30 doors, an entire house, there had to be 250 8-foot sticks to 12-foot sticks of trim base, trim around the jams, the whole 9 yards. Everything was solid cherry, man. It was gorgeous when it was all done, but that's also where I learned that Famo wood is not your friend because Famo wood will eat the finish. So everything had to be color puttied, and there was a lot of color putty in that house. So, yep, always the fun ones. And it's funny because I didn't think about that for years. Now that I think about it, been a while.
Yeah, some of the ones that cause trauma, you try to forget.
Yeah, no joke. Because how that whole job ended was that they were running either low on money or Pella, the window company. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was Pella. Didn't make all the windows out of cherry. They made them all out of pine. But
Close enough.
yeah, right. So if I'm not mistaken, I think they made the mistake. So they gave them a really good deal if they kept them because they don't want them back. They're custom made for these windows. They're bay windows. They were lean out windows, whatever they call them. And they all had the little hand crank, so that was even more fun. But I gave them a quote on making it match the cherry because I'm the one who did the original cherry, and they said it was too high. And the only downside was I had to do it in between other jobs because at this point I'd already taken on another job, so I couldn't be there full time at their house. So I had to be, 2 hours here, 5 hours there. Whenever I had an opportunity and I was done with this and it could be drying, I would run over to their house and do this. So, because don't forget, everything had to be done in house when it was already installed. Couldn't be done at the shop. So they said, well, it was too much and they needed it done and blah, blah, blah. So they hired someone else to do it. And they went down to the paint shop that I eventually worked at after this. This is really one of those things that got me out of finishing for a while because they undercut me. Okay. So they, whenever you try to undercut somebody on the price, usually there's a reason. So they're trying to cut a corner somewhere. So they went down there and they talked to him about it. And then they called me on the phone and said, yeah, there's this company that says that you finished all these doors, that you got everything from here, and they're wanting your stain match. Do you want to give it to them? And I said, absolutely. They can have it all they want to. So they get these gallons of stain. They did all of the windows in the house, and they messed them all up. Because I just told them, I said, yeah, they can have it would work great on cherry, but it ain't going to work on pine. I'm not dumb.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. They can have that for me. Knock yourself out. So then I get a call from them. And it's not that I did it on purpose. It was a little bit out of spite because it was like they didn't want to take my price for it. So then I go in, I assessed what they did, took a look at how badly, it was bad. They let stain dry in areas. It wasn't even, I don't even think they put finish on it. I think they seriously stained it and left because it was so dry.
Wow.
And so then they said, well, what's it going to take to make it match? And then I gave them a price on that. And they're like, well, it's almost double what your original price was. And I'm like, yeah, I got to fix their mistakes first in order to get it back to where I was going to do it. So now you just added more price to it. And I wasn't trying to be mean. It was the truth. It was going to take way longer. And I had to push them off because I had to finish this other job in order to actually, now I really had to focus on it. I couldn't just come in and do my part and 2 hours, 5 hours be done for the day. I had to come in and spend all day on this. So needless to say, set your price. People may not be happy with it, but at the same time, if someone makes a mistake, I know my dad always had that rule, charge them double after that, just because you're going to have to fix their mistake and then go back to doing what you were going to do originally.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be afraid if you get underbid. It's part of life. People sometimes don't want to pay what they're getting as long as you're doing quality work. Your work will come around.
Yeah, and it really will. And it's not going to be the first thing that you do that you can charge this much money for. And people are always going to have sticker shock because in their mind they thought it was going to be this much. I don't know how many times I've quoted kitchens for a third of the price that a painting company did, because they know it's a pain in the butt. They don't want to do it, so they charge so much more. Doing kitchen refinishings, if you want to get into refinishing, that one's easy because it's more of just tedious details that paint companies don't want to do. They want to blow and go. They want to spray this with the airless sprayer and get out, get to the next job. So they're going to way overquote a kitchen job or bookcases. So those definitely work out really well. But yeah, after that, and I was just tired. That one particular company was going around to other places I had been. I don't know what the deal was with them, but they were undercutting everyone that I was giving quotes to. So I just said, you know what, that's fine. They can have it. And then I went to work for that paint company, and that was the best decision I ever made because that was a lot more fun. Because then I could have people coming in and they had problems. How do I get this? So that guy for that company finally came in, finally understood who we were because we never met. I had no idea who he was. And then I told him what he did wrong. And I said, for this job, don't do that. You're just going to make it worse for yourself. And then I'm hoping he did much better in life instead of undercutting people, but whatever.
Some people never learn. They get for the quick buck and move on.
Yes. Yep. If you have someone in your area who's going to undercut to make a quick buck but not do a quality job and then disappear, be ready for that too. There's always going to be those out there. But that's what makes, I don't know, that's what makes our part fun. For as far as being able to do these things, have these stories. Oh man, I'm trying to think if there's anything else randomly. I mean, now all these jobs are coming back to my head, in my mind.
We did a whole house with the cabinet shop I worked for, and I keep in mind back then I was, 135 pounds. I know it's hard to imagine, hard to envision, but trust me, it was there.
Okay.
And being the short, small guy on the crew, they always put me in the weird spots and the tight areas to get things, taken care of. Well, we did this laundry room where this upstairs hallway had this chute that we built, and it kind of went in, down, and over into this cabinet that we were building below it in the laundry room. So the two had to be able to mesh up. So we fixed the chute from the upstairs, and we were working on the cabinet from the downstairs because we built the chute in two pieces so that they could come together better, because there was no way we were going to get them together through the hole and then down.
Okay.
So they hoisted me in from the upstairs into this laundry chute, and the guy was holding my legs while I was down, upside down in this chute. Well, they decided that for safety purposes, is what they told me. They went out and got a rope and tied my legs together, because I had my legs sort of bent at the knee and was using the heel of my feet to keep myself wedged against the chute. So I, just extra protection. Well, they said, okay, he's got this. So they put the belt around my legs and tied it off on the other side of the room, just as extra protection. Well, they said, okay, well, they don't need me to hold his legs anymore. They all left and went to lunch with me hanging upside down. You talk about angry.
Oh,
and finally, one of the other subcontractors on the job, he came because he heard me yelling. Well, the audio was coming out of the downstairs, and he kept looking around, and I saw him walk into the laundry room, look around, and then left again. And I went, wait, come back. And he came back, and he looked, and he finally looked up and went, holy shit, what are you doing up there? So yeah, he came up, and him and another guy helped hoist me out. At this point, my legs were numb, couldn't feel them.
Use them.
So they pulled me out from above on this laundry chute and helped me kind of get situated down. And the guys came back from lunch all sipping on their drink, and none of them brought me one. They just, thought it was all funny. Well, they didn't know that my legs were so numb from falling asleep, and all the blood was rushed to my head that I was dizzy. I said, you know what? I'm going to the truck. So I sat in the truck the rest of the day. What a nightmare of a job. But never again did I trust them to hold me or hoist me.
Yeah.
From then on,
that was it.
It was always a way out. And had they not tied my legs off, I had seriously debated, if the other subcontractors didn't hear me in there yelling, to just sort of unbend my knees and hope that I could fall and catch myself, 6 or 7 or 8 feet, however tall that was, with my hands before I crashed to the floor on my face. But thankfully I didn't go that route.
Thankfully you didn't have to do that.
Yeah, that was a nightmare job.
Playing pranks on the job site, that's always, I mean, I don't know. So I'm the owner's son, and that was always a real pain in the butt until everyone got to know me. Then it was fine, because it was like, yeah, I am. But at the same time, he treats me 10 times worse than any of you on the job. He's the hardest on me and this and that. So, I don't know. So if you're on the job site and you have to work with the owner's son or daughter, trust me when I say that they have to go home to that person at the end of the day too. So, it's way harder, and they hear about it the whole time. So on the entire ride there and the entire ride home, they got to hear all about it. So being that guy was never that much fun. But at the same time, it was fun. Once you get to know everybody, it was all right. That's also
It's not always the case though, Michael. The cabinet shop I worked for, the owner's son was sort of my boss and not always the most pleasant person, and his dad always took his side. So,
oh well, that's just bad. That's just bad. No, it's got to be balanced.
oh, that's not what he meant.
No, gosh,
No,
this. Oh yeah.
when he pushed you down the steps and broke your arm, he was trying to help you. It's not what happened, so I'm not sharing a story. I'm just saying it was.
Yeah.
There were
Just
times
that
where
mentality.
it was pretty close to that, you know. So.
Well, there's times where you're driving up. Okay, so my dad's driving the truck. Gerald is in the passenger seat. I'm in my truck, and so this is years after that one. And he has this big trailer, and there's this entertainment center that we're going to install stereo and the whole stuff. Like that's what he did for a while. He did the one-off entertainment centers, and at that time that was really big in the late '90s, early 2000s. And they had it all tarped, and they had it moving blanket all wrapped up, strapped down, everything else. Well, at some point down the road, and we're talking maybe a 15-minute drive from the shop to this customer's house, I get a little bit behind them, and then when I'm pulling in, it's like literally they had just pulled in maybe 2 minutes before that. But I see Gerald out there, and he is just unstrapping like the wind, like he is just moving. And I see my dad come out, and he's looking all over this place. I'm like, what is going on? And at the same time, I realized, why is there smoke coming out from underneath this thing? Right? So there's Gerald, and he's just ripping moving blankets off this thing. And they're just flying off. Well, they both smoked. And at some point, someone decided to flick the cigarette out the window, which it came back and landed in the trailer. Didn't think anything of it because they're driving along. When they pull up and they start seeing smoke everywhere, you talk about, I was laughing so hard, and they were both mad as hell at me. But at that time, they already had the moving blankets off. So there's nothing I could do to help. I cleaned it up. I helped clean that part up. But watching him fling that stuff, quality entertainment. And then another one, you never get sheets of MDF or plywood at a big box store with the tailgate down. Okay. So 8-foot bed, long bed, you can put the tailgate up. I am 16. I'm running to the store. Gerald's in the passenger seat. We're getting plywood. I'm basically driving the boss's truck, if you will, at this point, at this age, 17. No, it was 17. I remember. And in Arizona, there is a main highway that goes through most of the valley, and all the roads go over it. Okay. So the interstate or the freeway out there is underneath, kind of in this little, basically it looks like a canal. So on the top, though, everything's kind of domed. So we get to a stoplight. I'm being a young guy who's not thinking anything of the world. I hit the gas. And wouldn't you know it, there was a sheet or two of plywood. It was MDF, as a matter of fact, come sliding out the back.
Only a sheet or two?
Only a sheet or two out of the 5. Yeah. They just happened to just sink right on out. So and we're in traffic. This is maybe 8:30 in the morning. So there's traffic. So I hear I didn't notice it at first. I hear honking horns. And so Gerald jumps out. Got to remember he's got a 3-foot ponytail. He's out there, and I wish I had a picture of it so I could describe it, but it was like there was this slight halo around him because his hair's flowing in the breeze, and he's just taking these sheets of plywood and he's just slamming them in the back of the truck. And then he puts the tailgate up and he just looks at me and he just does this, like, tailgate next time, because I was in charge of that. So he gets in the truck. He says no words. Nothing's being said until we get to the shop, and then he tells my dad what happened. And he just has that look on his face like, yeah. No. Owner's son, fun times.
Well, I guess that job wasn't all bad. I had a couple fun times with the owner's son. I was under 21, so I couldn't drive the delivery truck over out of state. And we went on this huge, long job. We got this contract with, I won't say the name because it's not sponsored, but a well-known national cellular phone company. And so we were traveling all the way from, all up the East Coast, all the way out to Nevada and some other places. Well, we had the hard luck to get the job down in Tallahassee and Panama City. And it
Ooh.
just so happened it was right around the time of spring break. So we went and did Tallahassee first, and we busted hump, got that done. And this was my younger days, so I wasn't thinking much else. We were drinking the whole way down. Well, the owner's son wasn't because he was driving the whole way down.
Okay.
So me and the other guy that was in the cab, we were putting some back. So my younger, wilder days. So we went and knocked out Tallahassee, and we were all just doing that. So we get into Panama City, and keep in mind, we're in a big delivery truck. And so we get there, and it's just stop traffic. I mean, just crawling. And me and the other guy, he was my cousin, so he was probably 2 or 3 years older than me, 3 years older than me. Okay. So we were both like, why are we sitting in the cab of this truck with this doofus? So we got out, lifted up the tailgate of the big delivery truck, and we're sitting on the blankets looking at all the traffic behind us, thinking we're all cool in the back seat, back bed of this big delivery truck, and just checking out the scenery during spring break, my young stupid days. But that week was tough because we got the job done like super fast, and we spent like 2 or 3 days at least just renting the little mopeds that they had for rent down there, and we were racing up and down the strip in the mopeds. We got the biggest one we could get without requiring a helmet, and that's the one we went with. And so we had moped drag races up and down the strip with each other.
Not fueled by adult beverages at all.
No. The odd part was when we were done with that trip and on the way home, me and my cousin stayed in the back of the truck with all of the moving blankets as bedding. Mm-hmm. We slept the entire ride back while the owner's son had to drive.
That's why he was such a fun guy to be around. He couldn't partake.
Yeah.
He had to lead by example.
He partaked enough when we were in Florida, but he didn't, obviously he didn't partake while we were driving home. But we made him sit up there by himself while we laid and rested up in the back. Good times.
Gosh. I was just thinking of one and I just lost it. This is the thing about getting old that's really fun. I wasn't drinking or anything like that. Because I really didn't start any of that stuff till much later in life, but man alive. Trying to think what you were talking about here. Hey, we'll have a senior moment, as I call it. Oh well, it'll come back.
Drag racing and mopeds.
Drag racing wasn't mopeds. I mean, I can see the actual thing happening. I'm just trying to remember what the hell it was now. Oh well, I do remember when I was in a band. And, not political or anything, but I remember 9/11, I remember 9/12, and I remember 9/13 because there was no air traffic. And I remember doing a job where we had started the week before that, and we came back to finish up the install because when I was the install guy, I would help bring things to there, like, the delivery part. Then the rest of the guys, like Gerald, he would basically be installing and doing that. And then I'd be running back and getting other stuff, whatever. And then I came to do like some of the trim work or help install the trim. He was always really good at cutting all the moldings and everything. And then I could put it in for him and then touch up all the nail holes and everything. But the house was like literally in the flight path of Sky Harbor Airport. So it was really noisy. Mm-hmm. And I remember how eerily quiet that was. And there was a particular time in Phoenix in the flight path, everyone comes in from the west in the morning, and then they come in from the east in the afternoon. It always switches up because of the wind. There's always this really weird prevailing wind that switches as the day goes on. And so in the afternoon, dead quiet. And I'll never forget just how eerily quiet that was. Mm-hmm. And we were all kind of just looking at each other. Everyone had that sense of like we all knew what it was, but we just didn't say it. But it wasn't as good as your truck. I know there's something. That's going to drive me nuts now.
Well, I have another delivery truck story. Maybe it'll spark your memory.
Yeah.
Me and, you know him, Nick from Linkspore. he and I used to be on an install crew together. So we were out on an install crew. We were in the big delivery truck. We were on a short out of town trip, and we were bored. I mean, it was just a long stretch of nothing road, and we were bored. So we were playing gin rummy in the truck. He was driving, and
He
I
was
was in the
driving and
passenger.
playing.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we were playing gin rummy, you know, and I mean, it wasn't like it was just we were both focused, but he would play a part, and then he would look at the road, and then he would kind of glance at his hand, and when I would go, he would glance down and kind of see what I did, and then he would go. Well, I don't know what happened, but he got distracted. Don't know how,
How that figured.
and we almost ran a red light. He slams on the brakes. All the cars go dumping off on the floor. We literally end up stopped in the middle of the intersection. We both looked around and just kind of drove on through because at that point there was no reason, and it just scared the bejesus out of both of us. And we both just looked up and said, "Yeah, we're done with Rummy. We're done." So we paid attention to the road the rest of the time. Whew, what a fun,
I can't imagine. I
interesting trip
mean,
that was.
living outside of DC, you see people reading the paper while they're on the beltway, and that always kind of, I still don't know how the hell they did that without crashing. But so my story that I had, because it was the delivery truck. So you got to remember these trucks here. This is Hawaii. It was an old sugar plantation Ford F-350. It had to be bigger than that. It was huge flatbed type truck, dually. Well, because the guy that I worked for had a lot of connections on the island, there was a particular house by a very famous person being built, and it had a ton of slate left over. Like they over ordered the slate and they didn't need any more. So the contractor's like, well, hey, if you want to come get it, we'll just say we used it all. I didn't know this at the time. I was just riding with him. Hey, we gotta do a job. So I'm going to drive my truck. You're going to drive this truck. Okay. So we get there, and the guy loads up two of these, and remember that slate. So it's a full pallet of slate, two of them on this truck. And then he just kind of hits the side of the truck and he says, just start going and I'll catch up with you. And he's got like a Toyota. So as we're going down the road, his is, riding like this, it's got the Carolina squat going on. So we pull over the place, we strap it all down. He said, okay, so I'm going to go ahead of you. We're going to go separately. By the way, this is highly illegal. So therefore, if you get pulled over, you know nothing. You were just driving. Now's a good time to tell me. Thanks. Appreciate that. So as I'm going down the road, and this is on the Big Island, and on the northwest side is desert, and there is nothing out that way. There literally is maybe a 45-minute drive with barely any houses or anything. All of a sudden, the rubber on this tire, because mind you, the truck is old, and I don't think he ever changed the tires because he never used the truck. It was only ever once in a while. So the tire on one side decides it's just going to come off the rubber is going to come off the tire. Okay, great. So give him a call, because this was during the time of cell phones. This is like 2006. And I let him know what happened. He said, I need you just to keep on going. We can't afford for you to, have someone come find you on the side of the road. You need to keep on driving. I said, is it safe to drive on just the steel belts of the tire? It'll be okay. So I kid you not, this truck is weighed down. Obviously the tire came apart, and it is slippery on steel belts. I had no idea. I've never driven on them before, because normally you just pull over and change the tire. So here I am going down the road. I've got all this slate in the back, and the truck is just weaving back and forth. And I'm trying my best just to keep it on the road. As cars are coming at me, I know I had to look slightly sideways, because there was a lot of times I had the steering wheel completely turned to keep going straight. And we finally get to this one place, and he's pulled over, and he's kind of like pushing me into this driveway. And there's a guy there that happened to have, I think it was a 9-ton jack, or I don't remember what it was, but it was a big semi jack. And that was all that you could use to get that load and the truck up in the air to change the tire. So he just sees like, we'll just park it right here. And we put some branches over it. I mean, it was so shady. And he said, okay, we're going to leave. He's going to come back, come by here, in 2 days or whatever. He's out on another job. So needless to say, always check your references. And if you need to drive on steel belts, it will actually work. It is just not something I ever recommend, ever.
Congratulations.
Yeah. In the short amount of time I was living in Hawaii, there was so many things that happened. but we only remember the good ones. I haven't thought about that in a long time. I remember being on that cell phone being like, the tire blew out. You're just going to have to keep on going. That's what he said. Oh, Mr. Chris Miller, thank you for joining us, sir.
Look at that. You know, during your Hawaii story, you should have pulled up Kyle's photo so you could have that in your memory as a.
This is what Oahu looks like. Nothing at all like the Big Island. The Big Island is just desolate nothingness. And interesting fact, though, it has all 7 climates from the world in one spot.
That's where I'd want to live.
So you can go from a tundra to a desert. Yeah. Yeah, that's some of the best honey I've ever had as well. Just due to the fact that it's over there they call hickory, or no, sorry, mesquite is called kiave. So everything was kiave honey, but good stuff. Yeah, it wasn't all bad. But I will definitely, anyone who ever says that I went to the better island. No, you went to the more populated island.
You went to the tourist trap.
Yeah, you went to the tourist trap. You didn't go to the better island. What a sucker. That's what they sold him while he was there. No, funny thing is that everyone who visits like, oh, I would love to live here. You don't know true prejudice until you want to say that you want to live somewhere like Hawaii. That's all I'm going to say. They will shoo you out in a hurry. But the really cool thing about the place is no one owns oceanfront property. If you have I can't even remember the guy's name now from the Men's Warehouse, but he had a really nice beach. So we used to always go there, but he's not allowed to kick anyone off. There's no private beaches there. So you can walk into the beach of any of these big houses and they can't say anything. And he was actually one of the coolest people I've ever met as far as just, you're in his backyard basically. And he'd come out and be like, you guys want some burgers? I cannot think of his name now. I stayed out of the tourist areas. I don't know. I saw some pictures. They look pretty touristy to me.
I don't know. Most of the pictures I saw, he was in a kayak. So, I mean, maybe he did stay out of the tourist areas. He was on the water most of the time.
There you go. Well, you can always do a kayak at home. That's other than it's really cold water. So story-wise, whenever you have jobs, hey, you better make the best out of them. Don't ever be grumpy and hate the fact that you're there. Try to make the best out of it for sure. That way you have some stuff to talk about.
That was the first time I ever got to see Las Vegas. Was because of a cabinet job.
Oh, yeah?
That was back when they had the $5 or $6.99 steak and lobster meals.
Buffets.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the good old days back then.
Yeah, those were good days.
Matter of fact, I went on that trip with Nick too.
Look at that. There are no sea turtles at home. You got a point there in the kayak. Mating season.
If you have sea turtles in, was it Pennsylvania, I think is where you live, that would be interesting, outside of an aquarium, being there's no sea.
Now what he's going to do is he's going to CNC some 3D hanus, put them out there on the front lawn. Well, there it goes again. See? Ooh, okay. So did I ever tell you the story about repairing? It was someone else's job. They installed the stereo equipment on particle board that was black melamine thermal fused particle board and scratched it all up. Okay. So get a call from this company. We've got a really angry customer. We need you to go fix this. Yeah, snapping turtles are not nearly as much fun. That is true. So he's way up. He's probably 45-minute to an hour drive away from the shop. And the guy called and he said, just make it happen. He said, I don't care what it takes. Just fix it. And he said, basically, when they installed the stereo equipment, they scratched the shelves really bad. Okay. I can make that happen with my handy Sharpie. That's where I went wrong on this, by the way. So as I'm walking up to the door, I look in, you glance at the garage. I'm a car guy. I glance at the garage. He's got a Ferrari F40 in the garage. Okay. Just to kind of get your mindset around the customer type. I come in, he's just very upset, very short with me. I have never met the guy. He didn't even introduce himself. He's just like, it's over there, So as I go take a look at it, I'm looking at it. It's really not that bad. They're like maybe the size of a toothpick, as far as width and length. They're very short little scratches. So I said, okay, you just want to hide this, right? So no one can see the white underneath the black melamine. Yeah. Just need it to look uniform. Okay. So I go out to the car or truck and I get a Sharpie. And I literally come back in and I just start Sharpieing the lines because it's inside of a cabinet behind doors. Okay, there's no light in there. It's just the stereo equipment. And all of a sudden I get all done and he comes out and he looks at it. He's like, wow, that looks really good. And he's like, wow, how did you do that so fast? I said, well, I mean, literally it's black melamine, so a Sharpie does a really good job. He went from, wow, that's amazing, to you did what in half a second. He kicked me out of the house. He's on the phone with the guy that called me to come do it. And he's like, I got this guy coming in here with a Sharpie trying to fix this stuff. Needless to say, I completely never got paid for that job because I was told do whatever it takes and cover it up. And when the customer, I guess, called and cussed him out, he never paid me for it. So you live and learn. You live and learn.
Well, yeah, you at least make it seem like you're doing a good job, doing something tough. Mud turtles.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. John has mud turtles. That does count technically. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, we
can't believe we rambled for an hour. I can't believe that.
That's how it's supposed to work, right? We just ramble and people listen.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And then there's people like Chris Miller who decided to come in the last 5 minutes and say, "Hey guys,
2 good ones there. Look at them go." So, maybe we'll do a part 2 on this because I know as my brain starts to kick them off, I'll go ahead and write them down and say, oh, hey, don't forget that story for Chris. Because really, I would just randomly have these stories for Chris. And to me, they're not believable when I tell them. But, oh, man, they're so much fun when I remember them. And they're all random. Oh, yeah. 100% random.
Yeah, maybe you'll find some more of your fun jobs.
You know what I'll do is I'm going to go get that book, and we're talking, it's one of those old photo albums. So for the kids at home who don't know, photos used to come as a certain size and you had to slide them into plastic, and that's how you kept them. That was our hard drive. Literally, it was a hardcover book. So a lot of the pictures are stuck in there, and I got to just peel the plastic because they came from Arizona. So I'm pretty sure they're melted.
Here on page 14, boys and girls, this is the photo I took back in 1994.
And if you look on the back, they're sequentially ordered by the number they were on the roll. Oh, you didn't miss much, Chris. We were just picking on you. We were just telling stories from the work site. You know how it goes. I know he's got stories. He's seen some things. He's been an industry man for many years.
Mr. Amana himself.
I don't want to give away the secrets. Now I'm trying to think. What was he? He was Whiteside before that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know why my brain just was like, no, that's not right. He's Freud. No, he wasn't Freud. Anyway, sorry. Ramble about Chris.
So, listen, this is...
Yes, Kyle, that was just after Painted Portraits when we had disposable cameras. Yes, that is absolutely
we had correct. One of those giant flashes that you could only use once because the bulb went... And it
actually, a lot of my pictures you had to cross your eye in order to look at because there were all these funny colors on a poster. And then sometimes they'd be a schooner, maybe they'd be an apartment. I laugh at that apartments.com ad that they have now where she's looking at that poster and she sees an apartment. Oh, it's great. Those were fun.
Well, sooner or later, you'll remember the story.
Well, on that note, we're going to cancel right now. And thanks for joining us on a Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Chris starts getting into those jokes. I got to leave.
Welcome to Dad Joke Wednesday.
Yeah. And this is when we get into the 10 o'clock hour. This is when the dad jokes really start getting heavy. He's had too many cheer wines.
No, not today. Actually, I had no cheer wines today.
Well, it's a good thing I put not sponsored. They would be disappointed in you.
Yeah. I really should drink cheer wine, shouldn't I?
You should always have a cheer wine on there. Yeah. Because I always tag them. Why not?
Let's see how it goes.
It's like when you troll Stumpy Nubs, you eventually get a response. Still think that's funny. Anyways. All right. So next Wednesday, hopefully. I don't see any problems here. things are getting busier in the summertime, so I'm just trying to squeeze these in.
Yeah. If you miss us, don't forget to check out the pre or post recorded version of it. Out on the YouTube and Facebook page.
That's right. And don't forget to leave some comments. If you have some good stories, share them with us. Hey, good stories are good all around, and experiences in general. And they're not always going to be great. And sometimes they'll just be fantastic. It all depends.
Yeah. Some of those I highly regret. So for those of you who know me now and you heard some stories, you were like, oh, that's not me anymore. So there you go.
He's gotten better. He had daughters. That really changed his life.
Yeah, that did a number on me. All right.
I see it did wonders for your hair.
Yeah, the daughters did wonders for the hairline. The wife did wonders for the waistline. So
no complaints on my end as far as the waistline goes, because we just had homemade chicken Alfredo with homemade sauce.
Where's the escape end button? I gotta find it in here.
Sorry, I couldn't see from all that glare on my screen.
Yeah.
Well, join us next week, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Whatnot Podcast. I'm MikeZ.
Oops, wrong shoulder.
And he's Chris.
Whatnot Podcast. I'm trying to point to the sign. I'm not a weatherman, so I'm like always in the wrong direction. So
that's the story of your entire life right there, summed up, everybody.
Whatnot Podcast. Yeah, don't go looking at my weatherman during Hurricane Florence. That was
great.
That was
Is
sad.
that on Facebook?
I think so.
Yeah, go find Christopher Marcus Smith being the weatherman during a hurricane. What's even better is you got Jason in on it. And he looks so professional.
Yeah, after about my third or fourth one, he goes, okay, I'm tired of watching you have all the fun. Let me have some fun too. What can I do? So I got his family involved. So
yeah, that was pretty funny.
When you're bored and your in-laws are in the house with you and staying with you that week, you find things to get creative. And what's
like
better
marriage tips. Marriage tips are always good. If you haven't seen Chris's marriage tips, get on it.
Yeah, there's value there.
There is. Well, you can find Chris at Instagram.com, Chris Cross Crafts. I am a dad joke on TikTok, correct? Need to add that one here.
Yeah,
you can find some of my fun stuff on Instagram, DuffStyle1. Whenever I'm finishing this past weekend here, it was all birthday stuff. I was so wore out, so I need to post the chairs that I finally completely stripped down of their gunkiness and finished up, and the customers were so happy with them. That's what I always enjoy. But by the way, if you're into refinishing, there is a turn of the tide. No one wants to paint anymore. Everyone wants the painted stuff stripped down and stained. So it's a win-win for me. I'm so excited. It's a lot of work. It's a ton of work. 71 hours on bunk beds sanding. That's what I figured. Yeah.
And somebody's got more money than they got sense.
No, I didn't charge by the hour. I charged by the job. So I lost a lot. But I learned a lot too.
Oh, have mercy. You learned not to charge by the job?
Yeah, I learned not to charge by the job. Everything's by the hour now. So I think it was like $1.70 per hour. It was ridiculous. And then, of course, materials and everything else, but it was way underpriced. But you live and learn, So
goodness gracious.
This was our caveat for our Patreon subscribers who are going to watch the after show. You got to see it tonight for free. Join us on our Patreon. I think we have. Crap,
one of these days we'll get one of those.
Yeah, one day we should maybe have one. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the key is having one and then finding people who are willing to actually pay you.
Yeah. I know we both have one.
With.
Yeah, we both have one, but it's just like, so who's going to pitch in $1?
Yeah, I got it just so I can put it on marketing stuff, Patreon, go see, but
yeah, anyway. You got to have that little P, Yeah. Well, no, that sounded wrong. All right, so on that note, I'm out of here.
Yep, the dad jokes are. I mean, it's like the 10. Once you get to that 1 hour mark, it's like it just falls apart, man. So there's going to be people commenting now. It's like, okay, we're begging to run to 11 because we just want to see how far off the rails this will go.
Oh, and it's all water. I promise, it's all water. That's the bad part.
I can't show you my cup, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to. No. Hey, might as well while we're going crazy here.
I'm sorry, your screen froze up right when you're going.
Oh, bad timing then. All right, so one more story for the books, and because of Adirondack chairs is why it reminded me. So there was a time where I had these plastic Adirondack chairs, and what I did was I cut the legs off so it sat really low to the ground. I was into cars, I was into lowriders, I was into the custom scene, so having lowrider chairs seemed like a good idea. Yes, younger days. But then there was this bed frame that was sitting up in the shop, and my dad said, "Yeah, I don't need it for anything. You can have it." And so what I did was I mounted the Adirondack chair to the bed side. So it's that long bar that your mattress would sit on. I don't remember what they call it, the skirt, maybe? I don't remember. And so then I'm telling you, I don't know why, but we made it into a sled. And then we took the sled and we attached a rope to the bumper of a vehicle and we dragged it behind the car.
Sounds safe so far.
Oh, it's absolutely not safe. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so yeah, that's all. I mean, all these stories are tied in together here. But so needless to say, as we're going, we realized that where we had put the screws in is starting to wear the wood. So now we have sparks. Oh, well, this is cool. How do we get more sparks? More screws.
Well, that
So
makes
now we
sense.
have this piece of wood that's basically 99% screws because we just drilled a whole bunch of screws into it. Now, mind you, I wasn't paying attention to the cost of things at this time. I was just looking for sparks. So then we go out to Greenfield and McKellips in Mesa is right next to the airport, which is also right next to the Boeing, what is it, AH-50 Apache helicopter, actually, where they build them. And so we're out here and we found this one little spot that was like they had built it. It's a square industrial park. It's got the lights, it's got the sidewalks, it's got everything you need except for there's no businesses. It's just an open little area. So what do? We're taking it out and we're just drifting this thing around the back of my truck. Sparks flying, you name it. Well, all of a sudden, as we're coming around the corner and we stop and we're changing out people, because at this time, this thing actually became big. We had like what was just 3 or 4 of us doing it to like we had 25 people coming out to go riding this thing. All of a sudden over the horizon, like, okay, so right next to this park is orange trees, is an orange grove. And that's what was the divider between the Apache building where they built them and the road itself. So there's a bit of a barrier there for security. All of a sudden, quietly, there's this red dot sitting directly above the orange groves. The sparks, and then we get what there's an MP that came out later. But basically the sparks were setting off the heat-seeking missile targeting system.
Oh no!
When they were out testing this thing, and they couldn't figure out why they kept having why it was going over here. The targeting system was supposed to be for this particular area, and it kept going over here. So the guy was telling us, he said, so during these hours, if you wouldn't mind, don't come out here. We're talking like 2:00 in the morning. He said, because they are armed, they're trying to test, make sure everything works before they ship it out. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, it's either McDonnell Douglas or Boeing at the time that owned it. I think it was Boeing. But I will never forget the fact that we're sitting there. This thing is absolutely quiet, by the way. There is no noise coming off this helicopter. All I remember is there was a big dome of red. That's all I remember. And then, it flies over us. So then you could hear it. Then you could feel it, all that stuff. But I remember just thinking to myself, so we built a wooden, because he looked at it, he's like, so what is that exactly? And it's like, well, it's a lawn chair mounted to a bed rail with screws in it. And he just shook his head like, oh my gosh, like you guys are morons. So that was one of those stories where it's like you had to be there, but at the same time we kept doing it. We just didn't do it during the 12 to 2:00 hours for targeting. But eventually there was these guys down the street that were really good metal workers. And they built all kinds of one-off stuff out of metal. Well, the guy's like, hey, I got this spare titanium. Let's try to figure out a way if we can bolt it to the sled. So then we had rooster tails of bright white. It was, oh yeah.
I'm just envisioning Christmas vacation vacation with the Teflon coated.
Yep. Same idea, just with sparks. We had even bigger rooster tails coming off that thing. Cause I think the highest we ever got was 65 miles an hour. Yeah. Yeah. Quality entertainment right there. I still don't know how I'm alive after that one, but needless to say, barely anybody got hurt. There was 1 or 2 spills into onto the curb where it drifted a little too hard, but
Clearly
that was a lot of fun.
Like, that's okay. You kids have fun. I'll drive.
So for giggles, when you see my dad the next time you see him, just ask him about tray surfing. and the Adirondack chair mounted to the bed rails and see what he says.
I'll
'Cause it
probably
became a
get
thing.
some of the other looks that I've gotten when I've mentioned other stories. Be like, Mike's a dumbass.
It's amazing that I came from him and at the same time I'm alive. I know that's what he's thinking. But that
Works
was
out that way.
that was the maker mentality in me, is that how do I mount a plastic chair to a bed rail, and then how do I get more sparks? All the while it's just mounted to a bumper. We didn't have anything fancy. We just wanted to drag it behind on the asphalt.
Wow.
So there you go. There's your bonus 20 minutes for our Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for joining us for free tonight. If you'd like to support us, by all means.
We take check, money order, credit card, cash.
For these kind of stories that you can find later in life. Oh, you can watch this again later, and I'll watch it again later and be like, wow, I can't believe I said that.
Yeah, we'll be like, can we delete that last 10 minutes? No.
You know what I'm going to do for social media wise? I'm going to find, because now I've looked up that particular plot of land where it's at, and now it has businesses and all this other stuff around it. So it doesn't look the same as it did for us, but it's still the exact same infrastructure. So I'll take a picture of it and post it on there. And I may have a picture of that sled somewhere. That thing got beat to hell.
But was really repaved the roads by now.
Nah, it's still black, still asphalt, whatever. Not in industrial parks. They never paved them. All they did was come by with that rubber stuff and just the oil and the rubber and just poured in the crack.
Well, they had to clean up screw grooves.
I'm not saying that we didn't leave them, especially with the titanium, because and I'll show you on that picture too, because the place was up in the street over, and it was a good quarter-mile drag. That's how we got up to 65 miles an hour, or how we know we did is because we drag raced that with the sled on the back in order to get the rooster tails higher. I say this, and now I'm like, oh, but it happened. It's the truth. Is what it is. So join us next week, 9 p.m. for maybe not as much fun stories.
And whatnot.
So I'm MikeZ. Thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate it.
I'm Chris. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
See you.